Well, hey, good day to you. This is Todd. I am a regular dude walking in the Word. We are going through the book of Thessalonians, and we have not even started verse 1 yet. We're doing a couple episodes just to get some background information on the book of Thessalonians. And where we're getting that is from the book of Acts chapter 17, where it talks about, and this is Luke's perspective as he's writing the book of Acts, this talks about the start of the whole church, Church of Jesus, and from the resurrection of Jesus all the way through the day of Pentecost, and then how the church just explodes after that all over the world, just going all over the world. And chapter 17 is where Paul and Silas are traveling, and they stop in Thessalonica, and we talked about it yesterday there. They were there for 3 weeks, and they shared the gospel in earnest. They didn't waste any time. They were like, we need to share the gospel. We need to get a church started. And they didn't know how much time they had. And their time was obviously cut short because in 3 weeks' time, a riot started, and the believers there were believers there. Okay, so it wasn't unbelievers. They were believers there, and they had this church started. In that 3 weeks' time, the believers said, it's time for you to go because it's not safe for you here anymore. And so they sent them away at that point, and they were only there for 3 weeks. So we talked about yesterday that sharing the gospel in earnest. And then today I want to talk about, it's entitled today, Oh, You Troublemakers, okay? And you're going to see that Paul and Silas are accused of being troublemakers. And it's funny. I'm reading today, I read it yesterday too, from the New Living Bible. And it's just kind of funny the way it says it. And you're like, really? Paul and Silas are troublemakers for sharing the gospel? So anyway, let's read here today. This is taken from Acts chapter 17, verses 1 through 12. It's a little bit shorter passage than yesterday. It's actually some of the same verses, though. It says this: Paul and Silas then traveled through the towns of Amphipolis, through the towns and Apollonia, and they came to Thessalonica, where there was a Jewish synagogue. As was Paul's custom, he went to the synagogue service for 3 Sabbaths in a row, and he used the scriptures to reason with the people. He explained the prophecies and proved that the Messiah must suffer and rise from the dead. He said, this Jesus I'm telling you about is the Messiah. Some of the Jews who listened were persuaded and joined Paul and Silas, along with many God-fearing Greek men and quite a few prominent women. Okay, so these people became believers. There was Jewish people in this church here. There was Greek men and quite a few prominent women. Okay, so it was a mixture of people here. And it says here, he was there for 3 days, and he reasoned. He knew the Jewish scriptures, and he explained it all and reasoned that Jesus has to be the Messiah based on the scriptures here. And the people listened, and this is how that church starts. Okay? But it doesn't end there. Let's read verse 5. But some of the Jews were jealous, so they gathered some troublemakers from the marketplace to form a mob and start a riot. They attacked the house of Jason, searching for Paul and Silas so they could drag them out to the crowd. Not finding them there, they dragged out Jason and some of the other believers. Instead, they took them before the city council. Okay, so now they can't find Paul and Silas, and they only find Jason and some other believers, and so they dragged them to the city council. Now, this is the funny part. This is what they say. Paul and Silas have caused trouble all over the world, they shouted, and now they are here disturbing our city too. Really, this is just funny because Paul and Silas, according to these people, are causing trouble all over the world. They weren't causing trouble, they were just sharing the gospel. And they hadn't gone all over the world yet, but these people exaggerate things out and say, oh no, it's all over the world they're causing trouble. And then here, now they're here to disturb our city. And so, verse 7, and Jason has welcomed them into his home. They are all guilty of treason against Caesar, for they profess allegiance to another king named Jesus. The people of the city, as well as the city council, were thrown into turmoil by these reports. So the officials forced Jason and the other believers to post bond, and then they released them. Okay, so the the city doesn't know what to do with all this information and what to do with these people, and the city council doesn't either. And so, but they arrest them, and then these guys have to post bond to get out. That very night, the believers sent Paul and Silas to Berea. Okay, that ends it right there. Is Paul and Silas were there for 3 weeks, and after that riot, they were sent away, for their own safety. And so that's the church was started in 3 weeks time. When they arrived there, they went to the Jewish synagogue, and the people of Berea were more open-minded than those in Thessalonica, and they listened eagerly to Paul's message. They searched the scriptures day after day to see if Paul and Silas were teaching the truth. As a result, many Jews believed, as did many of the prominent Greek women and men. Okay? So, you have the same thing here in Berea. You have Jews believing and prominent Greek men and women. All right, so Paul and Silas are reaching the same people, Jews, Greeks, and men and women in those demographics there. Okay? But today I wanted to focus on, it says, "Oh, you troublemakers." Now, I go back to what I read earlier where it says, Paul and Silas have caused trouble all over the world. Okay, they caused trouble. Get that? And they shouted, "And now they are here disturbing our city too." All right. So these people accuse Paul and Silas of causing trouble all over the world for sharing the gospel. And now they're doing that here. If they're guilty of that, causing trouble because they share the gospel, I should be guilty of that also. I should be guilty of sharing the gospel. And we know as Christians that the gospel is salvation. It's good news. That's the definition of the gospel. It's good news that we're sharing. It's like I tell people, if there's a fire next door, I'm telling the people, get out. There's a fire. There's a fire. And they could go, "Oh, you're being judgmental. Why do you have to wake us up and tell us this?" Because you're going to die. Okay. And I'm giving you the good news that there's a fire. That's not good news, but there's a way for you to get out. All right. And so that's the good news. They can either reject that good news or not, but it's good news. But they might accuse me, the neighbors might accuse me of being a troublemaker because I woke them up or whatever, because, just to warn them about the fire. But I'm not a troublemaker. We, as Christians, know we're not troublemakers. We're just sharing the good news. But the world is going to accuse you of being a troublemaker if you're sharing the gospel. That's just a reality. If you love the Lord and you share the gospel, you are going to be considered a troublemaker and an enemy of the nation, enemy of the state, whatever, you're going to be the troublemaker. So, Jesus was, called that. His disciples were called that. And so we as Christians, realistically, we would be called that too. And if you're not called that, are you really, sharing the gospel and standing up and confronting the society? Probably not. Okay. So we should also be guilty and probably accused also of, "Oh, you troublemakers." So you troublemakers, watch out. I'm just a regular dude walking in the Word, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we continue our journey looking at the book of Thessalonians. Lord's blessing. I'll see you tomorrow.